After the beach is reduced to silence, after blood has dried on sand that once promised safety, the remaining players stand at what they believe is the end. The numbered cards are complete. The sacrifice has been paid in full. Every rule they were taught suggests that this moment should mean release. A door opening. A return to normal life. Yet Borderland has never been a place that rewards belief. It rewards endurance. And even that, only temporarily. What waits for them is not freedom, but revelation. Not an exit, but a deeper descent. Fireworks bloom across the Tokyo skyline, bright and celebratory, cruel in their timing. Where relief should arrive, uncertainty spreads instead. A woman steps forward, composed, smiling, untouched by the carnage that surrounds her. Mira introduces herself not as a savior, but as a host. With calm precision, she announces the truth the players were never meant to hear so soon. The games are not over. They have only just begun. What the players cleared was not the system, but its entrance. The numbered cards were merely preparation. Across the city, massive balloons rise into the sky, each marked with a suit and a rank. Jacks, queens, kings. Each one promises a trial beyond anything the players have survived so far. There are no instructions explaining how these games differ. There is no reassurance that survival will still be rewarded. All that exists is an unspoken warning. These are not puzzles designed to be solved. These are opponents to be faced. Each card represents not just difficulty, but intent. Someone is watching. Someone is choosing how they die. For Arisu, the moment is devastating not because of fear, but because of betrayal. Borderland has lied to him. It allowed him to believe that logic still mattered, that progress meant something measurable. He followed the rules. He paid the cost, and yet the finish line dissolves the moment he reaches it. The idea that there is no clear reward, no guaranteed way home, fractures the fragile sense of meaning he has been clinging to since the beginning. Survival alone is no longer enough. He needs an answer. Without one, every death feels heavier, more senseless, harder to justify. This is where the second stage truly begins. Not with violence, but with doubt. The players are forced to confront a possibility far more terrifying than dying in a game. The possibility that none of this leads anywhere. That Borderland is not a test with a prize, but a mechanism without mercy. A world that consumes people not to judge them, but simply because it exists to do so. For the first time, the question is no longer how to survive the next game. It is whether survival has any meaning at all. As the group moves through the city, Tokyo itself feels different. Empty streets no longer offer relief. Silence no longer means safety. Every open space feels exposed. Every building feels temporary. The city has become a board with no edges. A place where the rules can activate at any moment without warning. The comfort of knowing when a game begins and ends is gone. Borderland no longer waits for players to step forward. It reaches out and hunts them instead. Arisu feels this shift immediately. The fear pressing against him is no longer sharp and immediate. It is slow, suffocating, existential. He remembers his friends, the ones who died, believing there was an end point. He wonders if they were wrong to hope, or if hope itself was the trap. In the first stage, the games punished recklessness. In the second, they punish attachment. The more Arisu clings to the idea of returning home, the more Borderland seems designed to tear that belief apart. Usagi senses this change as well, though she responds differently. Where Arisu searches for meaning, she focuses on movement, on action, on staying alive, one step at a time. The contrast between them grows sharper here. Arisu wants answers before he moves forward. Usagi understands that answers may never come, and that waiting for them is another way to die. Their shared path continues, but the distance between their philosophies becomes harder to ignore. The announcement of the face cards reframes everything that came before. The numbered games now feel almost merciful by comparison. They were cruel, but structured, difficult, but understandable. The second stage introduces something far worse: intentional cruelty. Games not designed to be beaten, but to reflect the values of those who rule them. Each face card is a person, and each person brings their own beliefs into the arena. Justice, fairness, freedom, chaos, fairness. The players are no longer fighting systems. They are fighting worldviews. This realization settles heavily over the group. If the games are shaped by the minds behind them, then logic alone will no longer guarantee survival. Morality becomes a variable. Emotion becomes a weapon. And the rules themselves may shift, depending on who stands on the other side. Borderland is no longer testing intelligence or teamwork in isolation. It is testing identity. Who you are, what you believe, what you are willing to sacrifice when the rules stop being fair. There is a quiet cruelty in how Borderland reveals this truth. It does not do so through immediate violence. It allows the players to walk, to talk, to breathe, to hope just long enough for the realization to sink in. This world is not interested in closure. It is interested in exposure. It strips away illusions slowly, forcing its inhabitants to confront themselves before it confronts their bodies. By the time the players fully understand what the face cards represent, it is already too late to turn back. The city has transformed from a battlefield into a proving ground. The fireworks have faded, leaving only the vast sky and the looming symbols above it. Each balloon is a reminder that escape is no longer a reward for progress. It is a privilege that may not exist at all. Part 1 of the second stage ends not with death, but with a far heavier burden: uncertainty. The knowledge that survival no longer promises meaning, that even victory may lead nowhere, and that the only thing more dangerous than the games ahead is the possibility that there is no end waiting beyond them. Borderland has closed the door behind its players. What lies ahead is not a path home, but a deeper confrontation with what it truly means to stay alive when hope itself is under attack. The second stage does not announce itself with a countdown or a clear set of instructions. It begins with a gunshot. A body drops. Then another. There is no warning. No explanation. No familiar screen spelling out the conditions of survival. The players barely have time to process what they are seeing before the streets of Tokyo erupt into panic. This is the moment Borderland abandons structure. This is the moment it reveals its most terrifying face. The King of Spades has entered the game, and his presence alone is the rule. Unlike previous trials, there is no enclosed arena and no defined starting point. The entire city becomes the battlefield. Any street, any intersection, any open space can turn lethal without notice. People are not summoned into the game, they are hunted by it. The King of Spades does not wait for consent. He does not negotiate. He moves with a singular purpose: heavily armed, methodical, relentless. Survival is no longer a matter of clever thinking or teamwork. It becomes a matter of being somewhere else, anywhere else, when he arrives. What makes this trial especially cruel is its simplicity. There is no puzzle to solve, no hidden logic to uncover. The King of Spades does not represent intelligence or deception. He represents pure force, the kind of threat that cannot be reasoned with or outsmarted through words. His game strips Borderland down to its most primitive law. Those who cannot run, hide, or endure will be erased without ceremony. The city echoes with gunfire, and the illusion of safety collapses completely. For Arisu, this is the first time the games feel truly hopeless. In the earlier stages, death had rules. It followed conditions. Even when the cost was brutal, there was a sense that careful thought might create an opening. Here, there is nothing to analyze, no advantage to gain, no fair exchange. The King of Spades moves through Tokyo like an unstoppable disaster, and the players are nothing more than obstacles in his path. Arisu realizes with growing dread that intelligence has limits, strategy has limits, and this game is designed to expose those limits mercilessly. The psychological impact is immediate and overwhelming. People scatter in all directions, abandoning allies without a word. Trust dissolves under pressure. Every sound becomes a threat. Every shadow suggests death. The city that once served as a maze of opportunities now feels like a trap with no exit. Even hiding offers no guarantee. The King of Spades does not tire. He does not hesitate. The King of Spades, he advances with the patience of something that knows time is on its side. What makes his presence even more unsettling is the absence of spectacle. There is no dramatic announcement, no mocking voice, no visible enjoyment in what he does. His violence is efficient, almost clinical. This detachment is what elevates the fear. The King of Spades is not cruel for pleasure. He is cruel because that is his function. In Borderland, this makes him one of the purest embodiments of death itself. Not emotional, not personal, simply inevitable. As Arisu runs, memories intrude without warning. Moments from his old life surface in fragments. Quiet afternoons, familiar streets, ordinary fears that now feel insignificant. The contrast is unbearable. He understands now that Borderland is no longer testing whether he deserves to live. It is testing whether he can continue living without knowing why. Each step forward feels heavier than the last. Not because of exhaustion, but because the future has become a blank space. Usagi moves beside him, focused and alert, her instincts sharpened by experience. She does not waste energy questioning the logic of the game. She accepts the danger for what it is, and adapts. Where Arisu hesitates, she pushes forward. Where he looks back, she looks for an escape route. Their dynamic shifts here. Arisu begins to rely on her, not just for support, but for momentum. In a world without rules, decisiveness becomes a form of strength. The King of Spades forces a brutal realization onto everyone who survives long enough to understand it. Borderland is no longer interested in fairness. It has moved beyond teaching lessons. This game exists to exhaust hope itself, to make players feel small, powerless, and disposable. It challenges the belief that perseverance will be rewarded. Instead, it asks a darker question. If survival is reduced to chance and endurance, how long can the human spirit endure before it breaks? As the hours stretch on, the city fills with silence, punctuated by distant gunfire. Bodies lie where they fall, unacknowledged, unmourned. There is no time to grieve, no space to remember names. The King of Spades ensures that attachment becomes a liability. Anyone who stops for too long risks becoming the next casualty. Borderland demands forward motion, even when there is nowhere safe to go. Arisu begins to understand that this game is not about killing as many players as possible. It is about stripping away the belief that survival has moral meaning. The King of Spades does not discriminate between the brave and the cowardly, the kind and the cruel. Everyone is equally fragile under his assault. This indiscriminate danger erases the illusion that Borderland operates on merit. Sometimes, living is not proof of worth. Sometimes, it is simply proof of timing. Yet even in this chaos, something stubborn refuses to disappear. People still help each other, if only briefly. A shouted warning, a shared escape route, a hand pulling someone out of danger. These moments are fleeting, fragile, and often punished. But they exist. Borderland cannot fully erase the instinct to protect others, no matter how aggressively it tries. The King of Spades may dominate the streets, but he cannot entirely extinguish human connection. By the time the immediate threat recedes, those who remain are changed. The world feels narrower, heavier. The second stage has made one thing brutally clear. The games are no longer about clever victories. They are about survival, under conditions that refuse to make sense. The King of Spades leaves behind more than bodies. He leaves behind doubt, exhaustion, and a deep, lingering fear that no rule will ever protect them again. This encounter marks a turning point. Borderland has crossed a line from cruelty into existential terror. The players now understand that the world they are trapped in can abandon structure at any moment. That meaning is fragile. That hope can be hunted just as easily as people. As Arisu looks ahead, he realizes the greatest challenge may not be defeating the face cards. It may be finding a reason to keep moving when the games themselves have declared that there is no guaranteed way home. After the terror of the open streets, the club's game appears almost merciful by comparison. There is a location. There are rules. The doubling plays of leader of Marn. The doubling plays of the doubling plays. The doubling plays of the doubling plays. The doubling plays of the doubling plays. The doubling. There is a structure that suggests survival can still be earned through thought and cooperation. For Arisu, this is not merely another challenge. It is a deliberate choice. He steps into the domain of clubs, because clubs, by nature, value teamwork. In a world that has begun to feel random and cruel, the promise of shared survival feels like a lifeline. If people can still win together, then perhaps Borderland has not fully abandoned meaning. The arena is a massive maze formed from stacked containers, cold and metallic, stretching endlessly in every direction. At its center stands a tall pillar, silent and imposing, serving as the heart of the battlefield. Each team begins with an equal pool of points, divided among its members. Victory is not achieved through killing, but through contact. Touching an opponent transfers points from one side to the other. The rules are precise, almost elegant. Strategy matters. The rules are proscos. The rules are proscos. Coordination matters. And yet, hidden beneath this apparent fairness lies a ruthless truth. Points are lives. Lose too many, and you do not simply fail. You are erased. Arisu immediately understands that this game rewards planning over impulse. Together with Usagi, Tata, and the others, he devises a formation designed to minimize risk and maximize control. Pairs are formed, roles are assigned. One member carries most of the points, while the other acts as support, creating an illusion that conceals their true distribution. It is a strategy built on trust, discipline, and restraint. For a brief moment, it works. They move through the maze with confidence, winning encounters and steadily gaining the upper hand. This sense of control is comforting, but fragile. Their opponents, led by Kuzuryu, operate under a radically different philosophy. Kuzuryu believes that a game is only fair if everyone accepts the possibility of death from the start. He divides points evenly among his team, forcing each member to face danger directly. There is no protection, no hierarchy, no shield. Every encounter becomes a personal gamble. To Arisu, this approach feels reckless, even cruel. To Kuzuryu, it is honest. No one is valued more than another. No one is hidden behind strategy. Survival, in his eyes, must be confronted head-on. The clash between these two approaches turns the game into something far more complex than a contest of numbers. It becomes a collision of beliefs. Arisu fights to preserve life through careful calculation. Kuzuryu challenges the idea that life can be protected without cost. Their strategies reflect their inner worlds. Arisu still believes survival should lead somewhere meaningful. Kuzuryu has already accepted that meaning is something people impose, not something the world provides. As the match progresses, tension rises. Small miscalculations begin to accumulate. The opposing team takes risks Arisu cannot predict, willingly sacrificing one member to create an opening for others. These moves disrupt the balance, forcing Arisu to adapt faster than he is comfortable with. Every decision now carries immediate consequences. Hesitation costs points. Compassion creates vulnerability. The maze that once felt manageable becomes oppressive, its walls closing in with each passing encounter. At the center of all this stands Tata. He is not the fastest, nor the strongest, nor the sharpest tactician. He knows this better than anyone. Throughout his life, he has carried the weight of inadequacy, the belief that he is always one step behind others. In Borderland, that feeling intensifies. Watching his teammates strategize and fight, Tata begins to see himself as a liability, someone who benefits from the system, but contributes little to its success. This quiet self-loathing becomes the most dangerous element of the game. When the balance finally tips against Arisu's team, desperation sets in. Kuzuryu's forces make a bold advance on the central pillar, exploiting the very restraint Arisu relies on. The score swings violently. In a matter of moments, control slips away. The elegant plan fractures under pressure, and the team is forced into a defensive posture they were never meant to sustain. It is here that the true cruelty of the club's game reveals itself. Cooperation does not guarantee survival. It only makes the cost of failure heavier. Tada watches this collapse unfold and reaches a devastating conclusion. If he cannot win with strategy, if he cannot protect his friends through skill, then there is only one thing left he can offer. His body, his life, not as a gesture of despair, but as an act of will. In a moment of brutal clarity, Tada chooses to turn himself into the final piece of the strategy. He inflicts irreversible harm upon himself to remove his restraint device, allowing Arisu to use his accumulated points at the decisive moment. This act is not portrayed as noble or glorious. It is painful, desperate, and deeply human. Tada does not smile. He does not declare a speech. He acts because he believes this is the only way he can matter. His sacrifice becomes the fulcrum on which the entire game turns. With Tada's points, Arisu gains the leverage needed to force a final confrontation and secure victory. The game ends. The balloon bursts. The club's card falls. But there is no celebration. The maze that once echoed with footsteps now feels hollow. Tada lies motionless, his contribution complete, his presence gone. The victory tastes bitter, heavy with the realization that survival has once again demanded something that cannot be returned. Arisu stands at the center of the arena, holding the weight of responsibility he never wanted. He did not ask Tada to make that choice. Yet, Borderland ensured that someone would have to. Kuzuryu accepts defeat with quiet dignity. There is no anger in him, only recognition. He sees in Arisu the same conflict that defines himself, the desire to believe that fairness and compassion can coexist with survival. Their philosophies never fully reconcile, but they acknowledge each other in silence. In Borderland, that mutual understanding is rare and fleeting. The aftermath of the club's game lingers longer than the match itself. It forces Arisu to confront a truth he has been avoiding. Strategy can reduce risk, but it cannot eliminate sacrifice. Teamwork can delay loss, but it cannot prevent it entirely. Borderland does not punish people for caring. It exploits the fact that they do. Every bond becomes a lever the game can pull when it needs to break someone. As the group lays Tada to rest, there is no promise that his death will mean something greater. No assurance that the world beyond the games will honor his choice. All that remains is the vow not to forget him. In Borderland, memory is the closest thing to justice. The club's game ends, but its lesson does not. Survival is not just about staying alive. It is about deciding what you are willing to give, and what you will never forgive yourself for taking. While Arisu fights Borderland through emotion and responsibility, Chishiya walks a different path entirely. He does not seek meaning, nor does he cling to hope. Where others struggle against fear, Chishiya studies it. He understands something fundamental about this world, long before most players are willing to admit it. Borderland is not interested in courage. It is interested in exposure. And the fastest way to survive is not to deny human weakness, but to weaponize it. Chishiya approaches the face card games with cold clarity. He does not rush toward danger, nor does he hide from it. Instead, he positions himself where information flows freely, where human behavior can be observed under pressure. To him, every game is less about rules and more about people. The structure may change, the conditions may shift, but fear, greed, and self-preservation remain constant. These are the elements he knows how to control. The first of his trials forces him into a confined space with strangers whose lives depend entirely on trust. There are no physical challenges here, no tests of strength or endurance, only conversation, eye contact, and judgment. Each participant carries hidden information that determines their fate, and the only way to survive is to rely on others to tell the truth. Borderland disguises this as a test of cooperation, but Chishiya sees through it immediately. Trust is not the objective. Distrust is. As alliances form, Chishiya watches without participating. He notes how quickly people seek safety in numbers, how easily they surrender autonomy for reassurance. Groups form not out of logic, but out of fear, of isolation. Chishiya understands that these alliances are fragile. The moment someone lies, the entire structure collapses. Borderland does not punish dishonesty directly. It rewards the chaos that dishonesty creates. He begins to subtly disrupt the balance, not through open betrayal, but through implication. A comment here, a question there. He plants doubt without providing answers. People begin to second-guess each other, replaying conversations in their minds, searching for inconsistencies. The game accelerates toward its inevitable conclusion. Once trust erodes, survival becomes a solitary pursuit. What distinguishes Chishiya from the others is not his lack of empathy, but his refusal to romanticize it. He does not believe that cooperation is inherently virtuous. In his experience, cooperation often masks manipulation. Those who speak the loudest about trust are usually the first to abandon it when circumstances change. Borderland simply removes the social consequences that normally restrain such behavior. It reveals what people are willing to do when survival is the only currency. Chishiya survives this game not because he trusts correctly, but because he refuses to trust at all. He treats every statement as data, every emotional display as strategy. When the game ends, he stands among the few remaining not with relief, but with confirmation. Borderland operates exactly as he suspected. It is not a moral test. It is a mirror. His next confrontation raises the stakes further. This time, the arena is logic itself. A numbers game overseen by a man who claims to believe in fairness above all else. The structure is deceptively simple. Each participant selects a number. The closest answer wins. Those who lose are punished incrementally. Over time, the margin for error disappears. The game strips away randomness and leaves only calculation. At first glance, this seems like a contest tailor-made for someone like Chishiya. Yet, he immediately recognizes the trap. Pure logic favors predictability, and predictability favors those who can read patterns in others. His opponent, the King of Diamonds, understands this perfectly. He is not interested in victory through dominance. He seeks balance. A game where everyone has equal opportunity to fail. Chishiya realizes that playing optimally will only lead him deeper into his opponent's control. So, he does something counterintuitive. He introduces chaos. He chooses numbers that defy logical progression, forcing others to recalculate constantly. This destabilizes the mathematical equilibrium and shifts the game from computation to psychology. The focus moves away from finding the correct answer and toward predicting Chishiya himself. As players are eliminated, the game becomes more intimate, more dangerous. Each decision now carries greater weight. The King of Diamonds speaks of justice, of fairness, of a world where rules protect everyone equally. Chishiya listens carefully. He recognizes the bitterness beneath the rhetoric. A man who once believed in systems, now clinging to a game as proof that fairness can still exist somewhere. Here, the conflict becomes philosophical. The king believes that removing emotion creates justice. Chishiya knows that emotion never truly disappears. It simply hides. Systems do not erase inequality. They disguise it. The game's structure pretends to be neutral, but every rule favors those who can detach themselves from consequence. In that sense, Chishiya and his opponent are not so different. Both understand the cruelty of pretending the world is fair. The final exchange between them is quiet, almost respectful. Chishiya places his fate into the hands of his opponent, forcing him to confront his own beliefs. If fairness truly matters, then no one should decide another person's worth. The king hesitates. In that hesitation, his philosophy collapses. He cannot reconcile justice with responsibility. The system he built demands a choice he refuses to make. When the game ends, Chishiya survives once again, but something subtle has changed. For the first time, he does not walk away untouched. He has seen a reflection of himself in someone else, a person who used logic to protect themselves from a world they believed was unjust. The difference is that Chishiya has always known the world is cruel. He simply learned how to live within it. These games of the mind reveal an essential truth about Borderland. Intelligence alone does not save you. Neither does morality. Survival belongs to those who understand how belief shapes behavior. Chishiya survives because he accepts people as they are, not as they wish to be seen. He does not seek redemption. He seeks clarity, yet even clarity has a cost. Each game strips away another layer of detachment. Each victory leaves behind fewer illusions. Chishiya remains alive, but survival no longer feels like triumph. It feels like continuation. Borderland has not defeated him, but it has begun to challenge something deeper than his intellect. It has forced him to confront the possibility that living without belief may be its own kind of prison. As he steps away from the fallen face cards, Chishiya understands that the final trials will not be won by logic alone. Borderland is tightening its grip, drawing players toward confrontations that no strategy can fully control. The mind can navigate systems, but it cannot escape consequence. And in a world designed to test the limits of human will, even the sharpest intellect must eventually face a question logic cannot answer. Why continue when survival itself offers no promise beyond the next game? While Arisu sinks deeper into questions that have no answers, Usagi moves forward with a clarity that does not rely on explanation. She does not deny the cruelty of Borderland, nor does she attempt to justify it. She accepts its existence as a condition, not a puzzle. Where others ask why they must continue, Usagi asks only how. This difference, subtle at first, becomes the emotional axis of the second stage. In a world designed to erode hope, Usagi's strength lies not in optimism, but in resolve. Usagi has never framed survival as a philosophical challenge. For her, living is not something that requires validation. It is a physical act, rooted in instinct, discipline, and motion. Her past as a climber taught her a simple truth. When you stop moving, you fall. Borderland mirrors that lesson with merciless precision. The moment a player pauses to search for meaning, the world closes in. Usagi understands this intuitively. She survives not because she believes in a future reward, but because she refuses to surrender the present. Fourthy, 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 fourthy. This contrast becomes most apparent as Arisu begins to unravel. The deaths of those around him, especially the sacrifices made in his name, weigh heavily on his sense of responsibility. He carries every loss as proof that survival is unfairly distributed, that those who want to live the most are not always the ones who remain. Arisu searches for a rule that will justify the suffering. Borderland offers none. The absence of explanation becomes its own form of violence. Usagi watches Arisu struggle, not with frustration, but with concern. She recognizes the danger of his thinking, not because it is wrong, but because it leads nowhere. She has seen what happens to people who let grief define their choices. Her father walked that path, consumed by isolation and regret, until the world felt empty enough to leave behind. Usagi carries that memory quietly. It is not a wound she displays, but it shapes every step she takes forward. When the Queen of Spades game begins, it reveals itself as a brutal test of endurance, disguised as a team sport. The rules are simple on the surface. Two groups compete in a large-scale pursuit, with numbers and roles shifting constantly. But beneath that structure lies a more insidious temptation: safety. Players who lose are not eliminated. They are absorbed. The longer the game continues, the more appealing it becomes to stay, to stop running, to accept Borderland as a place where survival is guaranteed, even if freedom is not. This is where Usagi's choice defines her completely. She recognizes the trap immediately. Borderland is offering stability in exchange for surrender. It promises life without movement, existence without purpose. For players exhausted by fear and loss, this offer is dangerously seductive. Some choose it willingly, convincing themselves that staying alive inside the game is better than risking everything for an uncertain escape. The Queen of Spades understands this psychology well. She does not need to kill players directly. She only needs to give them a reason to stop wanting to leave. Usagi refuses that offer without hesitation. To her, living without forward motion is not living at all. She has already experienced what happens when the world becomes a cage disguised as shelter. The memory of her father's isolation sharpens her resolve. She will not allow Borderland to redefine survival as stagnation. Even if the outside world is broken, even if return is uncertain, she chooses movement. She chooses risk. She chooses the possibility of loss over the certainty of surrender. Arisu struggles to see this at first. The Queen of Spades game exposes his fear of responsibility more than any enemy could. If players choose to stay, then perhaps Borderland is not entirely evil. Perhaps the problem lies with those who cannot adapt. This thought terrifies him. Because if staying is acceptable, then all the deaths, all the sacrifices, lose their meaning entirely. Usagi challenges this thinking not through argument, but through action. She runs. She fights. She refuses to stop. Her determination forces others to confront their own hesitation. Not everyone follows her, but enough do to shift the balance of the game. The pursuit intensifies. Strategies emerge. People who once sought comfort in the group rediscover the instinct to escape. Borderland resists this shift violently, pushing players to their limits. Exhaustion sets in. Bodies fail. But Usagi continues, driven not by hope, but by refusal. She will not let this world decide what kind of life is acceptable. In moments of quiet between the chaos, Usagi finally speaks to Arisu in a way she never has before. She does not offer him a reason to live. She does not promise that returning home will fix anything. Instead, she tells him something far simpler and far more dangerous. That it is okay to live without knowing why. That searching for meaning can wait. Survival cannot. This idea cuts through Arisu's despair more effectively than any reassurance ever could. The Queen of Spades game ends not with domination, but with clarity. Those who choose movement win. Those who choose comfort remain behind. There is no moral judgment attached to either outcome. Borderland does not care why people make their choices. It only records them. Usagi stands among the survivors, exhausted but unbroken. Her victory is not measured in points or status, but in the fact that she never stopped moving forward. This moment marks a turning point in Arisu's understanding of survival. For the first time, he begins to see that his need for answers may be another form of avoidance, a way to delay the pain of living without guarantees. Usagi's strength lies in her acceptance of uncertainty. She does not demand that life be fair or meaningful. She demands only the right to continue. In Borderland, this becomes a radical act. Choosing to live without explanation is an act of defiance. It denies the world the satisfaction of breaking you completely. Usagi embodies this defiance, not through speeches or ideals, but through consistency. She wakes up. She moves forward. She survives. Again and again. As the game concludes and the city grows quieter once more, the impact of Usagi's choice lingers. She has proven that willpower does not require justification, that survival does not need to be earned through suffering alone, and that sometimes the most powerful response to a world without rules is not rebellion, but persistence. In a place designed to make people give up, Usagi's choice is simple, unwavering, and profoundly human. She lives because she refuses not to. The fall of the King of Spades does not arrive as a moment of triumph. There is no surge of relief, no collective breath released in celebration. Instead, what follows is silence, heavy and unsettling, the kind that lingers after devastation, rather than victory. The battlefield remains scattered with broken bodies and shattered resolve. Those still conscious struggle to breathe, to move, to understand that the nightmare stalking them across the city has finally stopped. Death has been wounded, forced to retreat, But the cost of that resistance is written clearly on every survivor left behind. In the absence of gunfire, the true weight of the confrontation settles in. The King of Spades was never simply another face card. He represented the moment Borderlands stripped itself of illusion. No riddles, no clever mechanics, no pretense of fairness. He was the answer to the question everyone feared asking. What if survival has nothing to do with worth, intelligence, or effort? What if death is arbitrary? What if running out of time has no deeper meaning? By standing against him, the players were not trying to win a game. They were trying to reject that idea entirely. Arisu looks around at the people who remain and feels the familiar pressure of responsibility and return, heavier than ever. He has seen victory before, but never like this. The King of Spades has fallen, yet nothing feels resolved. Friends are bleeding. Some are barely conscious. Others will never stand again. Arisu understands now that defeating death does not restore what it takes. It only stops it from taking more. Survival, once again, is not a reward. It is an obligation that comes with memory. What haunts Arisu most is not the violence of the battle, but the realization that they were all prepared to die. Each of them stepped forward knowing there might be no return. This was not bravery in the heroic sense. It was exhaustion, a quiet refusal to keep running. Borderland forced them into a place where confronting death directly felt less terrifying than continuing to live under its shadow. That choice lingers in Arisu's mind, reshaping how he understands the will to survive. For Usagi, the aftermath brings a different kind of clarity. She does not dwell on what might have been done differently. She does not question whether the fight was worth the cost. Her focus remains grounded in the present. Who is still breathing? Who needs help? Who must be carried? This instinctive prioritization is not emotional detachment. It is discipline. Usagi understands that grief can come later, but survival requires attention now. The world has not softened simply because one monster has fallen. Aguni's confrontation with the King of Spades remains vivid for those who witnessed it. Two men, shaped by violence, standing face to face in a moment stripped of spectacle. There was no hatred there, only recognition. The King of Spades was not defeated because he was weaker. He was defeated because, for the first time, he faced people who refused to play his role in the system. They did not run. They did not scatter. They denied him the isolation that made him invincible. In doing so, they exposed the truth beneath his power. He was not death itself. He was a man who had survived too long by becoming something unrecognizable. This realization ripples outward. The players begin to understand that Borderland elevates certain people not because they are superior, but because their traits align with the world's cruelty. The King of Spades thrived here because violence was familiar to him. The club's leaders thrived because sacrifice was a concept they had already accepted. The face cards are not gods. They are reflections of human extremes, sharpened by a system that rewards imbalance. As medics work with limited supplies and trembling hands, time stretches unnaturally. Each second feels borrowed. The survivors know they cannot remain where they are. Even wounded, they must move. Borderland has taught them that stillness invites danger, yet movement now comes with pain. Every step is a reminder of what they endured to reach this point. The fall of the King of Spades did not make the world safer. It merely made survival possible again. In this fragile calm, Arisu begins to sense a shift within himself. The questions that once consumed him do not disappear, but they lose some of their urgency. He no longer demands an answer before continuing. He has seen that sometimes action must come first, meaning later, if at all. The stand against the King of Spades showed him that purpose can exist in resistance itself, not because it guarantees a future, but because it affirms agency in the present. This understanding does not bring peace. It brings resolve. Arisu knows there are still face cards left, still games that will test them in ways they cannot predict. But the second stage has crossed a threshold. Borderland has revealed its most merciless form, and the players have survived it. Not unscathed, not victorious in any traditional sense, but unbroken. That distinction matters more than any cleared card. The city feels altered after the King of Spades falls. Not physically, But psychologically, the fear that once pressed in from every direction loosens slightly. The players walk more deliberately now, aware of their vulnerability but no longer paralyzed by it. They have faced inevitability and forced it to yield, if only briefly. That knowledge becomes a quiet source of strength, passed between them without words. Yet there is no illusion that this marks the beginning of freedom. Borderland does not operate on narrative satisfaction. It does not reward courage with mercy. The surviving players understand this better than anyone. The fall of the King of Spades is not the end of the nightmare. It is a turning point. A reminder that even in a world designed to erase people, resistance can still leave a mark. As night settles over Tokyo once more, the group regathers, wounded but present. They do not speak of the future in grand terms. There are no promises made, no declarations of destiny. Instead, there is an unspoken agreement to continue, to face what comes next together. Even if together does not last. Borderland may control the games, but it does not control their choice to stand. The legacy of the King of Spades is not his reign of terror, but his defeat. Not because it proved death can be destroyed, but because it proved death can be delayed through unity. In a world where survival is constantly questioned, that delay becomes precious. It buys time. It buys memory. It buys the possibility, however faint, that meaning might still be found beyond endurance. Part 6 closes not with hope, but with determination. The players move forward, carrying the weight of what they have lost and the knowledge of what they have reclaimed. The King of Spades is gone. Death has been challenged, and while Borderland still waits with new trials ahead, the survivors walk on with a truth carved into them by blood and resolve. Even here, even now, existence is not something to be surrendered quietly. The final stage does not greet the survivors with violence. It welcomes them with calm. After the chaos of blood, gunfire, and collapsing bodies, the garden atop the skyscraper feels almost unreal. Sunlight filters gently through leaves. Tea is served. The air is still. This alone is enough to make Arisu uneasy. Borderland has never been kind without intent. When cruelty disappears, it is because it has learned a subtler language. The Queen of Hearts does not threaten the body. She targets something far more fragile, the mind. Mira, the woman who stands before them, wears a smile that never fully reveals itself. It is not warm, nor is it cold. It is precise, calculated. She does not posture as an enemy. She behaves like a host, a therapist, a guide. Her game appears harmless on the surface. A simple match of croquet. No penalties for losing. No immediate punishment. The players are told they do not even need to win. They only need to play until the end. The simplicity is disarming, and that is precisely the danger. From the first moment, Arisu senses that the rules are not the point. The Queen of Hearts is not interested in how the game is played. She is interested in why the players continue playing at all. As the match unfolds, she begins to speak. Not in riddles, not in threats, but in possibilities. She offers explanations, stories, answers to the questions Arisu has been carrying since the beginning. Each explanation is delivered calmly, convincingly, wrapped in logic that feels just close enough to truth to be tempting. She speaks of futures where the world has ended, where Borderland exists as a constructed refuge, where memories are manipulated and reality is manufactured. She speaks of experiments, of simulations, of civilizations that grew bored with peace and sought entertainment in controlled destruction. Each version is presented not as a lie, but as a hypothesis, and that is what makes them dangerous. The Queen of Hearts does not force belief. She invites doubt. With every word, Arisu feels the ground beneath his certainty begin to crack. He believes that if he can understand why Borderland exists, then the deaths of his friends might carry meaning. But Mira understands this hunger better than he does. She feeds it slowly, carefully, until the need for answers begins to outweigh the will to continue. The game becomes secondary. The conversation becomes everything. Usagi watches this unfold with growing concern. She senses the shift in Arisu before he does. his movements slow. His focus drifts inward. The Queen of Hearts has found the fault line she was searching for. Arisu's compassion, his guilt, his endless search for justification. These are not weaknesses in the ordinary world. Here, they are vulnerabilities. Mira presses gently against them. Never enough to cause immediate collapse. Only enough to keep him questioning himself. Then the illusion deepens. The garden fades. The city dissolves. Arisu finds himself back at Shibuya, before everything began. The streets are full. The air is alive. His friends are there, laughing, alive, untouched by Borderland. The pain of loss crashes over him all at once. This reality feels real, because it is what he wants. A world where none of this happened. A world where he failed, but not catastrophically. Where his regrets are small and manageable. In this constructed truth, Borderland becomes a psychological retreat, a fantasy created by a broken mind, unable to accept loss. Mira appears not as an enemy, but as a caretaker, suggesting that perhaps Arisu's struggle is not about survival at all. Perhaps it is about letting go. Letting go of guilt, letting go of responsibility, letting go of the need to keep fighting. The temptation is overwhelming, because it offers rest, an end to effort, an end to pain. This is the Queen of Hearts' true weapon. Not deception, but resignation. She does not tell Arisu that life is meaningless. She suggests that it might be easier not to decide at all. That continuing to struggle only prolongs suffering. That surrender can be reframed as acceptance. In this space, giving up feels logical, even merciful. Usagi breaks through not with argument, but with presence. She reaches Arisu in the one way logic cannot. She does not ask him to believe in the future. She does not promise that things will improve. She reminds him of something simpler, that living does not require a reason grand enough to justify loss. That searching for meaning can become another form of escape. That it is possible to live simply because someone is still holding your hand. Her words cut through the illusion precisely because they are incomplete. They do not resolve Arisu's questions. They do not heal his grief. They acknowledge uncertainty without surrendering to it. This moment becomes the axis on which the entire game turns. The Queen of Hearts relies on certainty, whether it is true or false. Usagi offers something else. Permission to continue without knowing. Reality fractures again. The garden returns. The croquet match resumes. Mira watches closely, her smile unchanged. But something has shifted. Her control over the narrative weakens as Arisu reclaims agency. He does not reject her explanations because he has proven them false. He rejects them because he no longer needs them to move forward. This is the one outcome the Queen of Hearts cannot manipulate. The final moments are quiet. The sun begins to set. The game reaches its conclusion without spectacle. Mira accepts defeat gracefully, almost appreciatively. Her role was never to kill. It was to persuade, to make players choose to stop on their own. Arisu's refusal to surrender his will, even without answers, marks the end of her influence. As the light fades, the illusion dissolves completely. The Queen of Hearts remains an enigma to the end. Whether she believed the stories she told, or merely used them as tools, is never fully revealed. And that ambiguity is intentional. Borderland does not provide closure. It tests resilience against uncertainty. For Arisu, this encounter changes everything. He understands now that the most dangerous enemy was never death, nor the games, nor even Borderland itself. It was the desire to escape responsibility through explanation. The Queen of Hearts forced him to confront that desire and choose against it. Not because he found the truth, but because he chose to live without it. Part 7 ends where the battle becomes internal. The physical trials are nearly over, but the struggle for agency reaches its peak. Reality may bend, memory may lie, meaning may remain elusive, but as long as the will to continue exists, Borderland has not won. The Queen of Hearts falls not because her illusion is shattered, but because Arisu steps beyond the need for one. When the final game ends, Borderland does not collapse in spectacle. There is no thunder, no dramatic announcement declaring victory. Instead, the world pauses, as if holding its breath. The sky fills once more with fireworks, eerily familiar, echoing the moment when everything began. This repetition is deliberate. Borderland closes its circle not by escalation, but by reflection. The players who remain stand at the threshold of an answer they have chased through fear, loss, and endurance. And for the first time, the truth does not arrive as a challenge. The survivors are gathered and offered something Borderland has never given before: agency without pressure. Two paths appear, neither disguised as superior. One leads back to the world they came from. The other leads deeper into Borderland. Not as players, but as residents. Citizens of a world defined by trials. This moment reframes everything that came before. The games were not only tests of survival, they were filters. Those who reached the end did not simply endure, they demonstrated a refusal to disappear. For Arisu, the offer lands with unexpected clarity. The search for meaning that once consumed him has been stripped to its core. There is no grand explanation delivered by a godlike voice. No ultimate moral judgment. Borderland does not justify itself. It simply reveals what it has always been. A boundary. A narrow space between life and death, where the human will is measured not by virtue, but by persistence. The truth emerges quietly, almost gently. The fireworks that marked the arrival into Borderland were never celebrations. They were an event in the real world. A catastrophe. A sudden disaster that tore through the city, suspending countless lives in an instant. Borderland exists in that suspended moment. Not heaven, not hell. A liminal space where consciousness fights to return to the body. Those who survived the games were not chosen. They chose themselves, again and again, by refusing to let go. This revelation does not erase the pain of what was lost. It does not resurrect the dead. It does not soften the brutality of the games. Instead, it reframes them. Every trial becomes a manifestation of the struggle between surrender and resistance. Every sacrifice becomes a moment where someone pushed back against the pull of oblivion. Borderland was never judging worth. It was recording effort. Arisu understands now why the games felt so deeply personal. Why fear manifested differently for each person. Why some face cards seemed driven by ideals rather than rules. Borderland reflected the inner states of those trapped within it. Logic, chaos, compassion, cruelty. These were not arbitrary themes. They were fragments of the human mind under extreme pressure. The world did not invent these trials. The players shaped them. As survivors choose their paths, the atmosphere remains solemn. Some decide to stay, drawn by the clarity Borderland offers. A world stripped of pretense, where existence is direct and consequences immediate. Others, including Arisu and Usagi, choose to return. Not because the real world promises happiness, but because it promises uncertainty. And uncertainty, they have learned, is not something to escape. It is something to live with. When Arisu awakens, the world feels smaller and heavier all at once. A hospital room. Soft light. Familiar sounds. His body aches in ways Borderland never allowed him to notice. The confirmation comes not through exposition, but through presence. Family, voices, the weight of gravity. He is alive, not metaphorically, not conditionally, fully. The journey that felt endless resolves into a single truth. He made it back. Others awaken as well. Faces once hardened by survival, now softened by disbelief. Some remember fragments. Some remember nothing at all. Borderland fades like a dream that refuses to fully disappear. The memories dissolve, but the bonds remain. Arisu and Usagi meet again without knowing why. The sight of each other feels significant. Recognition exists without context. Trust without explanation. It is enough. This is where the final ambiguity appears. A single card remains. The Joker. It is not introduced with fanfare or explanation. It simply exists. A reminder, rather than a promise. The Joker does not represent another game waiting to begin. It represents uncertainty itself. The idea that not everything requires resolution. That some questions are meant to remain unanswered. The presence of the Joker reframes the entire experience one last time. Borderland was not a puzzle to solve, nor a story to conclude neatly. It was an experience meant to leave a mark. The Joker stands as a symbol of the unpredictable nature of survival, of the randomness that governs life as much as death. It suggests that even after returning, the world remains fragile. That existence is never guaranteed. For Arisu, this final understanding is enough. He no longer seeks a definitive reason for living. He has learned that reasons change, that meaning evolves, that sometimes surviving is the meaning, and sometimes meaning arrives later, shaped by the people who walk beside you after the struggle ends. The story closes, not with triumph, but with continuation. Lives resume. Scars remain. The games are over. But their imprint lingers in subtle ways. In choices made differently. In empathy sharpened by loss. In the quiet knowledge that life is not owed, but borrowed, moment by moment. Between life and death, Borderland revealed something simple and devastatingly honest. The will to live is not heroic. It is stubborn. It persists without certainty. It endures without justification. And when given the chance to step forward again, those who survived did not do so because they were stronger or wiser than others. They did so because, at the moment when letting go felt easier, they chose not to. The Joker remains, unseen but present. Not as a threat, but as a reminder that life itself is the ultimate game of chance. And that choosing to continue, even without guarantees, is the quiet victory that matters most.